The coin, what can the coin say? It can say it is not the coin that the astrologer once possessed. It can say it was not in existence last December. By its date, it can say this. And it was so. There was the greatest excitement in the court, while that lawyer and the judges were reaching for coins and examining them and exclaiming. And everybody was full of admiration of Wilhelm's brightness in happening to think of that neat idea. At last order was called, and the court said, all of the coins but 4 are of the date of the present year. The court tenders its sincere sympathy to the accused, and its deep regret that he, an innocent man, through an unfortunate mistake, has suffered the undeserved humiliation of imprisonment and trial. The case is dismissed. So the money could speak, after all, though that lawyer thought it couldn't. The court rose, and almost everybody came forward to shake hands with Margaret and congratulate her, and then to shake with Wilhelm and praise him. And Satan had stepped out of Wilhelm and was standing around looking on full of interest, and people walking through him every which way, not knowing he was there. And Wilhelm could not explain why he only thought of the date on the coins at the last moment instead of earlier. He said it just occurred to him, all of a sudden, like an inspiration, and he brought it right out without any hesitation, for although he didn't examine the coins, he seemed somehow to know it was true. That was honest of him, and like him, another would have pretended he had thought of it earlier and was keeping it back for a surprise. He had dulled down a little now, not much, but still you could notice that he hadn't that luminous look in his eyes that he had while Satan was in him. He nearly got it back, though, for a moment when Margaret came and praised him and thanked him and couldn't keep him from seeing how proud she was of him. The astrologer went off dissatisfied and cursing, and Solomon Isaacs gathered up the money and carried it away. It was Father Peter's for good and all now. Satan was gone. I judged that he had spirited himself away to the jail to tell the prisoner the news, and in this I was right. Margaret and the rest of us hurried thither at our best speed, in a great state of rejoicing. Well, what Satan had done was this. He had appeared before that poor prisoner, exclaiming, "The trial is over, and you stand forever disgraced as a thief, by verdict of the court." The shock unseated the old man's reason. When we arrived, 10 minutes later, he was parading pompously up and down and delivering commands to this and that and the other constable or jailer, and calling them Grand Chamberlain and Prince this and Prince that, and Admiral of the Fleet, Field Marshal in command, and all such fustian, and was as happy as a bird. He thought he was emperor. Chapter 1000. Margaret flung herself on his breast and cried, and indeed everybody was moved almost to heartbreak. He recognized Margaret, but could not understand why she should cry. He patted her on the shoulder and said, "Don't do it, dear. Remember, there are witnesses, and it is not becoming in the crown princess. Tell me your trouble, it shall be mended. There is nothing the emperor cannot do." Then he looked around and saw old Ursula with her apron to her eyes. He was puzzled at that and said, "And what is the matter with you?" Through her sobs she got out words explaining that she was distressed to see him, so. He reflected over that a moment, then muttered, as if to himself, "A singular old thing, the Dowager Duchess means well, but is always snuffling and never able to tell what it is about. It is because she doesn't know." His eyes fell on Wilhelm. "Prince of India," he said, "I divine that it is you that the crown princess is concerned about. Her tears shall be dried. I will no longer stand between you. She shall share your throne, and between you you shall inherit mine. There, little lady, have I done well? You can smile now, isn't it so?" He petted Margaret and kissed her, and was so contented with himself and with everybody that he could not do enough for us all, but began to give away kingdoms and such things right and left, and the least that any of us got was a principality. And so at last, being persuaded to go home, he marched in imposing state, and when the crowds along the way saw how it gratified him to be hurrahed at, they humored him to the top of his desire, and he responded with condescending bows and gracious smiles, and often stretched out a hand and said, "Bless you, my people." As pitiful a sight as ever I saw, and Margaret and old Ursula crying all the way. On my road home I came upon Satan and reproached him with deceiving me with that lie. He was not embarrassed, but said, quite simply and composedly, Ah, you mistake, it was the truth. I said he would be happy the rest of his days, and he will, for he will always think he is the emperor, and his pride in it and his joy in it will endure to the end. He is now, and will remain, the one utterly happy person in this empire. But the method of it, Satan, the method, couldn't you have done it without depriving him of his reason? Chapter 1. Tea was difficult to irritate Satan, but that accomplished it. What an ass you are, he said. Are you so unobservant as not to have found out that sanity and happiness are an impossible combination? No sane man can be happy, for to him life is real, and he sees what a fearful thing it is. Only the mad can be happy, and not many of those. The few that imagine themselves kings or gods are happy, the rest are no happier than the sane. Of course, no man is entirely in his right mind at any time, but I have been referring to the extreme cases. I have taken from this man that trumpery thing which the race regards as a mind. I have replaced his tin life with a silver-gilt fiction. You see the result, and you criticize. I said I would make him permanently happy, and I have done it. I have made him happy by the only means possible to his race, and you are not satisfied. He heaved a discouraged sigh and said, "It seems to me that this race is hard to please." There it was, you see. He didn't seem to know any way to do a person a favor except by killing him or making a lunatic out of him. I apologized as well as I could, but privately I did not think much of his processes at that time. Satan was accustomed to say that our race lived a life of continuous and uninterrupted self-deception. It duped itself from cradle to grave with shams and delusions which it mistook for realities, and this made its entire life a sham. Of the score of fine qualities which it imagined it had and was vain of, it really possessed hardly one. It regarded itself as gold and was only brass. One day when he was in this vein, he mentioned a detail, the sense of humor. I cheered up then and took issue. I said we possessed it. There spoke the race, he said, always ready to claim what it hasn't got and mistake its ounce of brass filings for a ton of gold dust. You have a mongrel perception of humor, nothing more. A multitude of you possess that. This multitude see the comic side of 1,000 low-grade and trivial things, broad incongruities, mainly, grotesqueries, absurdities, evokers of the horse laugh. The 10,000 high-grade comicalities which exist in the world are sealed from their dull vision. Will a day come when the race will detect the funniness of these juvenilities and laugh at them, and by laughing at them destroy them? For your race, in its poverty, has unquestionably one really effective weapon: laughter. Power, money, persuasion, supplication, persecution, these can lift at a colossal humbug, push it a little, weaken it a little, century by century, but only laughter can blow it to rags and atoms at a blast. Against the assault of laughter nothing can stand. You are always fussing and fighting with your other weapons. Do you ever use that one? No, you leave it lying rusting. As a race, do you ever use it at all? No, you lack sense and the courage. We were traveling at the time and stopped at a little city in India and looked on while a juggler did his tricks before a group of natives. They were wonderful, but I knew Satan could beat that game, and I begged him to show off a little, and he said he would. He changed himself into a native in turban and breechcloth, and very considerately conferred on me a temporary knowledge of the language. The juggler exhibited a seed, covered it with earth in a small flower pot, then put a rag over the pot. After a minute the rag began to rise. In 10 minutes it had risen a foot. Then the rag was removed and a little tree was exposed, with leaves upon it and ripe fruit. We ate the fruit and it was good. But Satan said, "Why do you cover the pot? Can't you grow the tree in the sunlight?" "No," said the juggler, "no one can do that. You are only an apprentice, you don't know your trade. Give me the seed, I will show you." He took the seed and said, "What shall I raise from it?" "It is a cherry seed. Of course you will raise a cherry." "Oh no, that is a trifle. Any novice can do that. Shall I raise an orange tree from it?" "Oh yes," and the juggler laughed. "And shall I make it bear other fruits, as well as oranges?" "If God wills," and they all laughed. Satan put the seed in the ground, put a handful of dust on it, and said, "Rise." A tiny stem shot up and began to grow, and grew so fast that in 5 minutes it was a great tree, and we were sitting in the shade of it. There was a murmur of wonder. Then all looked up and saw a strange and pretty sight, for the branches were heavy with fruits of many kinds and colors, oranges, grapes, bananas, peaches, cherries, apricots, and so on. Baskets were brought, and the unlading of the tree began, and the people crowded around Satan and kissed his hand and praised him, calling him the Prince of Jugglers. The news went about the town, and everybody came running to see the wonder, and they remembered to bring baskets too. But the tree was equal to the occasion. It put out new fruits as fast as any were removed. Baskets were filled by the score and by the hundred, but always the supply remained undiminished. At last a foreigner in white linen and sun helmet arrived and exclaimed angrily, "Away from here, clear out, you dogs, the tree is on my lands and is my property." The natives put down their baskets and made humble obeisance. Satan made humble obeisance, too, with his fingers to his forehead in the native way and said, "Please let them have their pleasure for an hour, sir, only that, and no longer. Afterward you may forbid them, and you will still have more fruit than you and the state together can consume in a year." This made the foreigner very angry, and he cried out, "Who are you, you vagabond, to tell your betters what they may do and what they mayn't?" And he struck Satan with his cane and followed this error with a kick. The fruits rotted on the branches, and the leaves withered and fell. The foreigner gazed at the bare limbs with the look of one who is surprised and not gratified. Satan said, "Take good care of the tree, for its health and yours are bound together. It will never bear again, but if you tend it well, it will live long. Water its roots once in each hour every night, and do it yourself. It must not be done by proxy, and to do it in daylight will not answer. If you fail only once in any night, the tree will die, and you likewise. Do not go home to your own country any more, you would not reach there. Make no business or pleasure engagements which require you to go outside your gate at night. You cannot afford the risk. Do not rent or sell this place, it would be injudicious." The foreigner was proud and wouldn't beg, but I thought he looked as if he would like to. While he stood gazing at Satan, we vanished away and landed in Ceylon. Chapter 1 was sorry for that man, sorry Satan hadn't been his customary self and killed him or made him a lunatic. It would have been a mercy. Satan overheard the thought and said, "I would have done it but for his wife, who has not offended me. She is coming to him presently from their native land, Portugal. She is well, but has not long to live, and has been yearning to see him and persuade him to go back with her next year. She will die without knowing he can't leave that place. He won't tell her. He will not trust that secret with anyone. He will reflect that it could be revealed in sleep, in the hearing of some Portuguese guest's servant some time or other. Did none of those natives understand what you said to him? None of them understood, but he will always be afraid that some of them did. That fear will be torture to him, for he has been a harsh master to them. In his dreams, he will imagine them chopping his tree down. That will make his days uncomfortable. I have already arranged for his nights." Chapter 1 T grieved me, though not sharply, to see him take such a malicious satisfaction in his plans for this foreigner. "Does he believe what you told him, Satan?" He thought he didn't, but our vanishing helped. The tree, where there had been no tree before, that helped. The insane and uncanny variety of fruits, the sudden withering, all these things are helps. Let him think as he may, reason as he may, one thing is certain, he will water the tree. But between this and night, he will begin his changed career with a very natural precaution for him. "What is that?" "He will fetch a priest to cast out the tree's devil. You are such a humorous race, and don't suspect it." "Will he tell the priest?" "No, he will say a juggler from Bombay created it, and that he wants the juggler's devil driven out of it, so that it will thrive and be fruitful again. The priest's incantations will fail, then the Portuguese will give up that scheme and get his watering pot ready. But the priest will burn the tree, I know it, he will not allow it to remain." Yes, and anywhere in Europe he would burn the man too, but in India the people are civilized, and these things will not happen. The man will drive the priest away and take care of the tree. Chapter 1 reflected a little, then said, "Satan, you have given him a hard life, I think." Comparatively, it must not be mistaken for a holiday. We flitted from place to place around the world as we had done before, Satan showing me 100 wonders, most of them reflecting in some way the weakness and triviality of our race. He did this now every few days, not out of malice, I am sure of that. It only seemed to amuse and interest him, just as a naturalist might be amused and interested by a collection of ants. Chapter 100, Chapter 11. For as much as a year Satan continued these visits, but at last he came less often, and then for a long time he did not come at all. This always made me lonely and melancholy. I felt that he was losing interest in our tiny world and might at any time abandon his visits entirely. When one day he finally came to me, I was overjoyed, but only for a little while. He had come to say goodbye, he told me, and for the last time. He had investigations and undertakings in other corners of the universe, he said, that would keep him busy for a longer period than I could wait for his return. And you are going away and will not come back any more. Yes, he said, we have comraded long together, and it has been pleasant for both, but I must go now, and we shall not see each other any more. In this life, Satan, but in another, we shall meet in another surely. Then, all tranquilly and soberly, he made the strange answer, there is no other. A subtle influence blew upon my spirit from his, bringing with it a vague, dim, but blessed and hopeful feeling that the incredible words might be true, even must be true. Have you never suspected this, Theodore? No, how could I, but if it can only be true. It is true. A gust of thankfulness rose in my breast, but a doubt checked it before it could issue in words, and I said, but we have seen that future life, seen it in its actuality, and so. It was a vision, it had no existence. Chapter 1 could hardly breathe for the great hope that was struggling in me, a vision, a Romans 6. Life itself is only a vision, a dream. Chapter 1, T was electrical, by God, I had had that very thought 1,000 times in my musings. Nothing exists, all is a dream. God, man, the world, the sun, the moon, the wilderness of stars, a dream, all a dream, they have no existence. Nothing exists save empty space and you. And you are not you, you have no body, no blood, no bones, you are but a thought. I myself have no existence. I am but a dream, your dream, creature of your imagination. In a moment you will have realized this, then you will banish me from your visions, and I shall dissolve into the nothingness out of which you made me. I am perishing already, I am failing, I am passing away. In a little while you will be alone in shoreless space, to wander its limitless solitudes without friend or comrade forever, for you will remain a thought, the only existent thought, and by your nature inextinguishable, indestructible. But I, your poor servant, have revealed you to yourself and set you free. Dream other dreams and better. Strange that you should not have suspected years ago, centuries, ages, eons ago, for you have existed companionless through all the eternities. Strange, indeed, that you should not have suspected that your universe and its contents were only dreams, visions, fiction. Strange because they are so frankly and hysterically insane, like all dreams. A God who could make good children as easily as bad, yet preferred to make bad ones, who could have made every one of them happy, yet never made a single happy one, who made them prize their bitter life, yet stingily cut it short, who gave his angels eternal happiness unearned, yet required his other children to earn it, who gave his angels painless lives, yet cursed his other children with biting miseries and maladies of mind and body, who mouths justice and invented hell, mouths mercy and invented hell, mouths golden rules, and forgiveness multiplied by 70 times 7, and invented hell, who mouths morals to other people and has none himself, who frowns upon crimes, yet commits them all, who created man without invitation, then tries to shuffle the responsibility for man's acts upon man, instead of honorably placing it where it belongs, upon himself, and finally, with altogether divine obtuseness, invites this poor, abused slave to worship him. You perceive now that these things are all impossible except in a dream. You perceive that they are pure and puerile insanities, the silly creations of an imagination that is not conscious of its freaks. In a word, that they are a dream, and you the maker of it. The dream marks are all present. You should have recognized them earlier. It is true that which I have revealed to you, there is no God, no universe, no human race, no earthly life, no heaven, no hell. It is all a dream, a grotesque and foolish dream. Nothing exists but you, and you are but a thought, a vagrant thought, a useless thought, a homeless thought, wandering forlorn among the empty eternities. He vanished and left me appalled, for I knew and realized that all he had said was true. A fable. Once upon a time, an artist who had painted a small and very beautiful picture placed it so that he could see it in the mirror. He said, "This doubles the distance and softens it, and it is twice as lovely as it was before." The animals out in the woods heard of this through the house cat, who was greatly admired by them because he was so learned, and so refined and civilized, and so polite and high-bred, and could tell them so much which they didn't know before and were not certain about afterward. They were much excited about this new piece of gossip, and they asked questions so as to get at a full understanding of it. They asked what a picture was, and the cat explained. "It is a flat thing," he said, "wonderfully flat, marvelously flat, enchantingly flat and elegant, and oh so beautiful." That excited them almost to a frenzy, and they said they would give the world to see it. Then the bear asked, "What is it that makes it so beautiful?" "It is the looks of it," said the cat. This filled them with admiration and uncertainty, and they were more excited than ever. Then the cow asked, "What is a mirror?" "It is a hole in the wall," said the cat. "You look in it, and there you see the picture, and it is so dainty and charming and ethereal and inspiring in its unimaginable beauty that your head turns round and round, and you almost swoon with ecstasy." The ass had not said anything as yet. He now began to throw doubts. He said there had never been anything as beautiful as this before, and probably wasn't now. He said that, when it took a whole basketful of sesquipedalian adjectives to whoop up a thing of beauty, it was time for suspicion. Chapter 1. T was easy to see that these doubts were having an effect upon the animals, so the cat went off offended. The subject was dropped for a couple of days, but in the meantime curiosity was taking a fresh start, and there was a revival of interest perceptible. Then the animals assailed the ass for spoiling what could possibly have been a pleasure to them, on a mere suspicion that the picture was not beautiful, without any evidence that such was the case. The ass was not troubled, he was calm, and said there was one way to find out who was in the right, himself or the cat. He would go and look in that hole, and come back and tell what he found there. The animals felt relieved and grateful, and asked him to go at once, which he did. But he did not know where he ought to stand, and so, through error, he stood between the picture and the mirror. The result was that the picture had no chance and didn't show up. He returned home and said, "The cat lied. There was nothing in that hole but an ass. There wasn't a sign of a flat thing visible. It was a handsome ass and friendly, but just an ass and nothing more." The elephant asked, "Did you see it good and clear? Were you close to it?" "I saw it good and clear, O Hathai, king of beasts. I was so close that I touched noses with it." "This is very strange," said the elephant. "The cat was always truthful before, as far as we could make out. Let another witness try. Go, Balu, look in the hole, and come and report." So the bear went. When he came back, he said, "Both the cat and the ass have lied. There was nothing in the hole but a bear." Great was the surprise and puzzlement of the animals. Each was now anxious to make the test himself and get at the straight truth. The elephant sent them one at a time. First the cow. She found nothing in the hole but a cow. The tiger found nothing in it but a tiger. The lion found nothing in it but a lion. The leopard found nothing in it but a leopard. The camel found a camel and nothing more. Then Hathai was wroth and said he would have the truth if he had to go and fetch it himself. When he returned, he abused his whole subjectry for liars and was in an unappeasable fury with the moral and mental blindness of the cat. He said that anybody but a nearsighted fool could see that there was nothing in the hole but an elephant. Chapter 1000, Oral by the Cat. You can find in a text whatever you bring if you will stand between it and the mirror of your imagination. You may not see your ears, but they will be there. Hunting the deceitful turkey. When I was a boy, my uncle and his big boys hunted with the rifle, the youngest boy Fred and I with a shotgun, a small single-barreled shotgun which was properly suited to our size and strength. It was not much heavier than a broom. We carried it turnabout, half an hour at a time. I was not able to hit anything with it, but I liked to try. Fred and I hunted feathered small game, the others hunted deer, squirrels, wild turkeys, and such things. My uncle and the big boys were good shots. They killed hawks and wild geese and such like on the wing, and they didn't wound or kill squirrels, they stunned them. When the dogs treat a squirrel, the squirrel would scamper aloft and run out on a limb and flatten himself along it, hoping to make himself invisible in that way and not quite succeeding. You could see his wee little ears sticking up. You couldn't see his nose, but you knew where it was. Then the hunter, despising a rest for his rifle, stood up and took offhand aim at the limb and sent a bullet into it immediately under the squirrel's nose, and down tumbled the animal, unwounded but unconscious. The dogs gave him a shake and he was dead. Sometimes when the distance was great and the wind not accurately allowed for, the bullet would hit the squirrel's head. The dogs could do as they pleased with that one. The hunter's pride was hurt, and he wouldn't allow it to go into the game bag. Chapter 1. In the first faint gray of the dawn, the stately wild turkeys would be stalking around in great flocks, and ready to be sociable and answer invitations to come and converse with other excursionists of their kind. The hunter concealed himself and imitated the turkey call by sucking the air through the leg bone of a turkey which had previously answered a call like that and lived only just long enough to regret it. There is nothing that furnishes a perfect turkey call except that bone. Another of nature's treacheries, you see. She is full of them. Half the time she doesn't know which she likes best, to betray her child or protect it. In the case of the turkey, she is badly mixed. She gives it a bone to be used in getting it into trouble, and she also furnishes it with a trick for getting itself out of the trouble again. When a mama turkey answers an invitation and finds she has made a mistake in accepting it, she does as the mama partridge does, remembers a previous engagement, and goes limping and scrambling away, pretending to be very lame. And at the same time she is saying to her not visible children, "Lie low, keep still, don't expose yourselves. I shall be back as soon as I have beguiled this shabby swindler out of the country." When a person is ignorant and confiding, this immoral device can have tiresome results. I followed an ostensibly lame turkey over a considerable part of the United States one morning because I believed in her and could not think she would deceive a mere boy and one who was trusting her and considering her honest. I had the single-barreled shotgun, but my idea was to catch her alive. I often got within rushing distance of her and then made my rush, but always, just as I made my final plunge and put my hand down where her back had been, it wasn't there. It was only 2 or 3 inches from there, and I brushed the tail feathers as I landed on my stomach. A very close call, but still not quite close enough. That is, not close enough for success, but just close enough to convince me that I could do it next time. She always waited for me, a little piece away, and let on to be resting and greatly fatigued, which was a lie, but I believed it, for I still thought her honest long after I ought to have begun to doubt her, suspecting that this was no way for a high-minded bird to be acting. I followed and followed and followed, making my periodical rushes and getting up and brushing the dust off, and resuming the voyage with patient confidence. Indeed, with a confidence which grew, for I could see by the change of climate and vegetation that we were getting up into the high latitudes, and as she always looked a little tireder and a little more discouraged after each rush, I judged that I was safe to win in the end, the competition being purely a matter of staying power, and the advantage lying with me from the start because she was lame. Along in the afternoon, I began to feel fatigued myself. Neither of us had had any rest since we first started on the excursion, which was upwards of 10 hours before, though latterly we had paused a while after rushes, I letting on to be thinking about something else. But neither of us sincere, and both of us waiting for the other to call game, but in no real hurry about it. For indeed those little evanescent snatches of rest were very grateful too. The feelings of us both. It would naturally be so, skirmishing along like that ever since dawn, and not a bite in the meantime. At least for me, though sometimes as she lay on her side fanning herself with a wing and praying for strength to get out of this difficulty, a grasshopper happened along whose time had come, and that was well for her and fortunate, but I had nothing the whole day. Chapter 1000. More than once, after I was very tired, I gave up taking her alive and was going to shoot her, but I never did it, although it was my right, for I did not believe I could hit her. And besides, she always stopped and posed when I raised the gun, and this made me suspicious that she knew about me and my marksmanship, and so I did not care to expose myself to remarks. Chapter 1 did not get her at all. When she got tired of the game at last, she rose from almost under my hand and flew aloft with the rush and whir of a shell, and lit on the highest limb of a great tree, and sat down and crossed her legs and smiled down at me, and seemed gratified to see me so astonished. Chapter 1 was ashamed and also lost, and it was while wandering the woods hunting for myself that I found a deserted log cabin and had one of the best meals there that in my life days I have eaten. The weed-grown garden was full of ripe tomatoes, and I ate them ravenously, though I had never liked them before. Not more than 2 or 3 times since have I tasted anything that was so delicious as those tomatoes. I surfeited myself with them, and did not taste another one until I was in middle life. I can eat them now, but I do not like the look of them. I suppose we have all experienced a surfeit at one time or another. Once, in stress of circumstances, I ate part of a barrel of sardines, there being nothing else at hand, but since then I have always been able to get along without sardines. The McWilliamses and the burglar alarm. The conversation drifted smoothly and pleasantly along from weather to crops, from crops to literature, from literature to scandal, from scandal to religion, then took a random jump and landed on the subject of burglar alarms. And now for the first time Mr. McWilliams showed feeling. Whenever I perceive this sign on this man's dial, I comprehend it and lapse into silence and give him opportunity to unload his heart, said he, with but ill-controlled emotion. I do not go 1 single cent on burglar alarms, Mr. Twain, not a single cent, and I will tell you why. When we were finishing our house, we found we had a little cash left over, on account of the plumber not knowing it. I was for enlightening the heathen with it, for I was always unaccountably down on the heathen somehow, but Mrs. McWilliams said no, let's have a burglar alarm. I agreed to this compromise. I will explain that whenever I want a thing, and Mrs. McWilliams wants another thing, and we decide upon the thing that Mrs. McWilliams wants, as we always do, she calls that a compromise. Very well, the man came up from New York and put in the alarm, and charged $325 for it, and said we could sleep without uneasiness now. So we did for a while, say a month. Then one night we smelled smoke, and I was advised to get up and see what the matter was. I lit a candle and started toward the stairs, and met a burglar coming out of a room with a basket of tinware, which he had mistaken for solid silver in the dark. He was smoking a pipe. I said, "My friend, we do not allow smoking in this room." He said he was a stranger, and could not be expected to know the rules of the house, said he had been in many houses just as good as this one, and it had never been objected to before. He added that as far as his experience went, such rules had never been considered to apply to burglars anyway. I said, "Smoke along then, if it is the custom, though I think that the conceding of a privilege to a burglar which is denied to a bishop is a conspicuous sign of the looseness of the times. But waiving all that, what business have you to be entering this house in this furtive and clandestine way without ringing the burglar alarm?" He looked confused and ashamed and said, with embarrassment, "I beg 1,000 pardons. I did not know you had a burglar alarm, else I would have rung it. I beg you will not mention it where my parents may hear of it, for they are old and feeble, and such a seemingly wanton breach of the hallowed conventionalities of our Christian civilization might all too rudely sunder the frail bridge which hangs darkling between the pale and evanescent present and the solemn great deeps of the eternities. May I trouble you for a match?" I said, "Your sentiments do you honor, but if you will allow me to say it, metaphor is not your best hold. Spare your thigh, this kind light only on the box, and seldom there, in fact, if my experience may be trusted. But to return to business, how did you get in here? Through a second-story window. It was even so. I redeemed the tinware at pawnbrokers' rates, less cost of advertising, bade the burglar good night, closed the window after him, and retired to headquarters to report. Next morning we sent for the burglar alarm man, and he came up and explained that the reason the alarm did not go off was that no part of the house but the first floor was attached to the alarm. This was simply idiotic. One might as well have no armor on at all in battle as to have it only on his legs. The expert now put the whole second story on the alarm, charged $300 for it, and went his way. By and by, one night, I found a burglar in the third story, about to start down a ladder with a lot of miscellaneous property. My first impulse was to crack his head with a billiard cue, but my second was to refrain from this attention, because he was between me and the cue rack. The second impulse was plainly the soundest, so I refrained and proceeded to compromise. I redeemed the property at former rates after deducting 10%. For use of ladder, it being my ladder, and next day we sent down for the expert once more and had the third story attached to the alarm for $300. By this time the annunciator had grown to formidable dimensions. It had 47 tags on it, marked with the names of the various rooms and chimneys, and it occupied the space of an ordinary wardrobe. The gong was the size of a washbowl and was placed above the head of our bed. There was a wire from the house to the coachman's quarters in the stable, and a noble gong alongside his pillow. We should have been comfortable now, but for one defect. Every morning at 5, the cook opened the kitchen door in the way of business, and rip went that gong. The first time this happened, I thought the last day was come sure. I didn't think it in bed, no, but out of it, for the first effect of that frightful gong is to hurl you across the house and slam you against the wall and then curl you up and squirm you like a spider on a stove lid till somebody shuts the kitchen door. In solid fact, there is no clamor that is even remotely comparable to the dire clamor which that gong makes. Well, this catastrophe happened every morning regularly at 5 o'clock and lost us 3 hours' sleep. For mind you, when that thing wakes you, it doesn't merely wake you in spots. It wakes you all over, conscience and all, and you are good for 18 hours of wide awakeness subsequently, 18 hours of the very most inconceivable wide awakeness that you ever experienced in your life. A stranger died on our hands one time, and we vacated and left him in our room overnight. Did that stranger wait for the general judgment? No, sir. He got up at 5 the next morning in the most prompt and unostentatious way. I knew he would. I knew it mighty well. He collected his life insurance and lived happy ever after, for there was plenty of proof as to the perfect squareness of his death. Well, we were gradually fading toward a better land on account of the daily loss of sleep. So we finally had the expert up again, and he ran a wire to the outside of the door and placed a switch there, whereby Thomas, the butler, always made one little mistake. He switched the alarm off at night when he went to bed and switched it on again at daybreak in the morning, just in time for the cook to open the kitchen door and enable that gong to slam us across the house, sometimes breaking a window with one or the other of us. At the end of a week, we recognized that this switch business was a delusion and a snare. We also discovered that a band of burglars had been lodging in the house the whole time, not exactly to steal, for there wasn't much left now, but to hide from the police, for they were hot-pressed, and they shrewdly judged that the detectives would never think of a tribe of burglars taking sanctuary in a house notoriously protected by the most imposing and elaborate burglar alarm in America. Sent down for the expert again, and this time he struck a most dazzling idea. He fixed the thing so that opening the kitchen door would take off the alarm. It was a noble idea, and he charged accordingly. But you already foresee the result. I switched on the alarm every night at bedtime, no longer trusting on Thomas's frail memory, and as soon as the lights were out, the burglars walked in at the kitchen door, thus taking the alarm off without waiting for the cook to do it in the morning. You see how aggravatingly we were situated. For months, we couldn't have any company, not a spare bed in the house, all occupied by burglars. Finally, I got up a cure of my own. The expert answered the call and ran another ground wire to the stable and established a switch there so that the coachman could put on and take off the alarm. That worked first rate, and a season of peace ensued, during which we got to inviting company once more and enjoying life. But by and by the irrepressible alarm invented a new kink. One winter's night we were flung out of bed by the sudden music of that awful gong, and when we hobbled to the annunciator, turned up the gas, and saw the word nursery exposed, Mrs. McWilliams fainted dead away, and I came precious near doing the same thing myself. I seized my shotgun and stood timing the coachman whilst that appalling buzzing went on. I knew that his gong had flung him out too, and that he would be along with his gun as soon as he could jump into his clothes. When I judged that the time was ripe, I crept to the room next the nursery, glanced through the window, and saw the dim outline of the coachman in the yard below, standing at present arms and waiting for a chance. Then I hopped into the nursery and fired, and in the same instant the coachman fired at the red flash of my gun. Both of us were successful. I crippled a nurse, and he shot off all my back hair. We turned up the gas and telephoned for a surgeon. There was not a sign of a burglar, and no window had been raised. One glass was absent, but that was where the coachman's charge had come through. Here was a fine mystery, a burglar alarm going off at midnight of its own accord, and not a burglar in the neighborhood. The expert answered the usual call and explained that it was a false alarm, said it was easily fixed, so he overhauled the nursery window, charged a remunerative figure for it, and departed. What we suffered from false alarms for the next 3 years, no stylographic pen can describe. During the next 3 months, I always flew with my gun to the room indicated, and the coachman always sallied forth with his battery to support me. But there was never anything to shoot at, windows all tight and secure. We always sent down for the expert next day, and he fixed those particular windows so they would keep quiet a week or so, and always remembered to send us a bill about like this. Wire $2.15. Nipple 75. 2 hours, labor 1.50. Wax 47. Tape 34. Screws 15. Recharging battery 98. 3 hours, labor 2.25. String 02. Chapter 50, Ard 66. Ponds extract 1.25. Springs at 52.00. Railroad fares 7.25. The 19.77.